Another interesting thing we saw during the crisis is people shifting the definition of currency. We don't necessarily need to spend money for things when we can also use our skills and our time. Across America and parts of Europe, people are joining time banks. The way it works is a barter-like system. We're seeing a barter economy where we can actually donate our skills and our time and use them as money. So in a time bank, I could donate 2 hours of piano lessons into the time bank, and I could get 2 hours of French lessons in return. No money changes hands and no taxes. Also, we're seeing the really interesting trend about taking existing assets you already own and actually making money off them. This is Whipcar out of the UK and another company in Boston called Relay Rides. Both of these companies are using geolocation-based software to allow you to rent your car by the hour, by the day, by the week, or by the month. So think about this as a business opportunity. What sort of advantages might there be to think about ways where ordinary consumers could use their existing assets to rent and move things forward? This is a really interesting company at South by Southwest, and I ran a panel recently at the Austin, Texas Festival. This is a company called Zarly. It's proximity-based selling. And the way it works is, if you join the Zarly network, you can stand on a street corner, let's say in Times Square, and you can say, I'm looking for a grand piano. A retailer could give you all kinds of deals in the moment on that grand piano, or an ordinary consumer in an apartment that wants to get rid of their piano could sell it to you as well. Very interesting new business model, all based on real-time proximity selling. The fourth of the 5 trends we're going to look at is this idea called block party capitalism. What we're seeing is that increasingly there's more room in our repertoire for having and wanting more local artisanal brands. It's not to say that brands aren't important. In fact, they've never been more important. But increasingly local brands provide provenance and they provide stories. So one example of a local solution is a guy named John Norton. He complained about the sorry state of recycling in Everett, Massachusetts for so long that the city council gave him the job. Now, his problem was he only had 5% of the people recycling. So he turned to a Brooklyn-based startup called Recycle Bank. What they have is a small RFID chip, a sensor, on their recycling bins. So when you take your recycling bin and you put it out on the front porch, it weighs the contents in your bin and it sends that information into your account. So you get what amounts to frequent flyer miles for recycling, which is another trend we like to call green and green. We want to do the right thing, but we also want to be compensated for it. In John Norton's case, what he found is that his recycling rates went up 20% in the first year, and his costs went down nearly 18%. Another very interesting technology that we're seeing is just beginning to take off is augmented reality. Now, a very interesting implication here for retailers, because with augmented reality, with companies like Layer, you can walk down the street and see things for sale inside the store without ever walking in. So retailers and other brands that opt into this, for example, Stella Artois recently did a promotion with Layer that allowed thirsty beer drinkers to walk down the street and identify which pubs had Stella inside without even walking in. Augmented reality. Then there's also ways to sort of navigate the complexity of the shopping mall. This is Point Inside that's creating indoor smart maps for navigating retail as well as malls and airports. Sometimes it's just plain fun. This is a really interesting promotion using social media and Twitter where there was a creation of a scavenger hunt for Dash for the Jimmy Choo Choos in the UK. Many of the ideas that we're seeing because of mobile, social, local technology are creating gaming overlays and incentives. Companies from Scavenger to many others are creating gaming and rewards as a way to interact and to get people to connect with the retailers. Then sometimes it's just having a really great insight into your customer. This is a bank that realized that they had a high degree of high net worth individuals that were also financial slobs. They weren't very good with their finances, but they had a lot of money. So they created a product called Banking by Shoebox. And the way it works is just like it sounds. Every month they take a shoebox, very nicely designed, they send it to you. You turn in your expenses and all your financial information, and they sort it out for you. Nice product. The fifth trend we're going to look at is what we call the Army of Davids. This is the power of cooperative consumerism, the idea that one individual can become many through the power of community, using social media to change the balance of power between the brand and the consumer. One example of that is a guy that I interviewed well before Google offered him $6 billion for his company, which is Andrew Mason. And I remember sitting with him in Chicago almost a year and a half ago, and he said, I've got this idea for a business. The more people that come into the deal, the lower the price. And I remember thinking it seemed obvious and very simple. But the power of what he's created with Groupon is actually extending into new business models as well. For example, we look at the power of Ford. Scott Monty, who heads up social media, this is a C-suite position. He reports into Alan Mulally. Ford is taking social media very seriously. And what Scott told us is that he created a new program called the Ford Fiesta Launch. So in launching a new car, he wanted to get input from customers, but he wanted to do it in a very transparent and public way. So what he did is he offered 50 cars on loan to millennials to drive the cars and to give Ford input. The key was all the input would be public on Twitter. So they created a hashtag, and they started to get feedback on the cars. One of the things that happened is they started to realize in the Twitter feeds that they were complaining about the cup holders that hold the drinks in some cars. And what they found is that the cup holders that were holding Red Bulls were flying out of cup holders that were built for Cokes and Pepsis. Now what he did is he turned around and he got R&D involved and also engineering, and they created a solution within about 24 hours. So the important point here is to think in new, exciting ways about not just social media and social marketing, but social as business model. How do you connect not only to your customers, but also break down the silos inside your corporation using these technologies? We also interviewed a carrot mob for our book. If a boycott is a stick, a carrot is an incentive. Many communities are using carrot mobs to basically pool their spending through Facebook and Twitter and other means and go to a local merchant. So in the instance of this carrot mob that we followed around in Tampa, they basically helped triple the size of a local merchant who was offering to go green and to improve her store. She basically got the support from this carrot mob by pooling their spending. Now, it seems sort of fringe and kind of small, but if you imagine the fact that you've basically got Groupon on one end, right? You've got the power of that and these ideas around ethics. Who's to say that businesses will not be looking at major blocks of consumers coming together to aggregate their spending and to basically force their needs onto us, not unlike the way lobbyists and constituents deal with politicians. Very interesting times indeed. Another aspect of the barter economy is borrowing office space. Liquid Space is actually creating a network where if you buy into the Liquid Space network, you get access to free space to work if you in turn offer up free office space to others. That's also the same driving principle behind Fawn, a really interesting company that's got 3.35 million Wi-Fi spots. The way this works is if you give up a little bit of your Wi-Fi in your apartment, you can actually join this network and get access to over 3 million Wi-Fi spots anywhere as you go around the world. Then lastly, very interesting co-opetition experiment, a program called Empty Miles. The insight was that there were 25% of the trucks on the highways were traveling empty or deadheading. So the Empty Miles program links retailers, manufacturers, even competitors to borrow each other's trucks using geolocation-based software. So we're really seeing some very interesting things, and one of the tenets that I actually believe that we really have to focus on is that today this market is no longer about consumers, but about customers. The consumer is actually a derogatory term. It reaffirms a stereotype of a mindless, gobbling beast of indifference, someone who's simply going to take and ingest whatever we put out there. When in fact, what we're seeing is that customers today are what matter. They're incredibly strategic, they're focusing their spending, and they're shifting their consumption from things that are sort of things that they don't necessarily need into things that they really want. Then lastly, I also believe it's a very interesting time and place for capitalism. That capitalism has been before more about quantity than about quality. And in your industry and the things that you do, we're seeing a shift. We call it a spend shift, away from buying things that are mass produced into things that have meaning. So I really encourage you to think about the high degree of investment that goes into the things that you offer. And that's what people are looking for today. And so this opportunity for capitalism to be not about more, but about better is a unique trend. So in conclusion, I spent a remarkable time interviewing industry executives, startup founders, and looking at these new trends. And it definitely signals a very exciting time ahead for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean.